Beans on toast is an iconic British meal that's gaining popularity here in the States. Today, I am comparing the classic convenience food with a posh, made-from-scratch version. It is a basic versus bougie baked bean and bloomer bread bonanza. And when I looked for breads for this, there were a couple of different British breads that I considered. There is a cob loaf, there's a cottage loaf, and there's bloomer bread, and they're all fairly similar other than a few details of like the shaping and the finishing. But from what I could tell, the bloomer bread seemed like the most appropriate to use with beans on toast. I've never made this exact recipe before. I've never had bloomer bread, so I'm interested to give it a try. But I've been making homemade bread with my mom my whole life. It's a specialty in my family. We all make homemade bread. So I have a little bit of the flour left, but I'm gonna go ahead and transfer this to my mixer and start kneading it, and then I will add the last little bit of flour as needed. I pulled out the big guns for this. This is my heavy duty mixer. So it took about 7 minutes of kneading. I ended up using all of the flour plus an additional half cup. So, and it's still a nice tacky feel. I just kneaded it until you can get a good stretch, and there's a window paning where light is visible through the dough without it tearing. And by hand, I'm just gonna knead it a few more times and bring it together just a little bit so it's not quite as tacky. But I didn't want to do that in the bowl. I want this last little bit of flour to be where I had enough control over it so I don't get too much flour in here. When I was in culinary school, they described that as a sexy dough. And that's all the details I'm going to give you, but it needs to be a nice sexy dough. So you want it to be able to stretch super thin without tearing the window pane, which that's what I'm getting here. And we're going to put a little bit of vegetable oil in the bowl, grease that up, and then I'm just going to cupping it on the side, sort of tilting downward. I'm going to spin it around so I get a nice, smooth, like tightly stretched top. It's just sort of like as I turn, it's pulling the dough from the top around to the bottom. Sort of like that. That motion. Over and over and over. I really like working with yeast doughs. If you can't tell, I worked in a bakery for a few years, and one of my jobs every day was to make the brioche dough. And I formed it like cinnamon rolls and different little buns, gorgeous little buns. And brioche are really difficult to work with, especially in a hot kitchen, because it has so much egg, so much milk, so much butter. So this one's a really easy dough to work with relative to brioche. And I am just covering this over with a damp but not wet tea towel. Just enough to give it some moisture to help keep it feeding and growing. And I'm using a tea towel because air can transfer in and out. There's yeast in here and it's alive and it needs to breathe and be happy. It's eating all your little bread molecules. So you need to feed it and treat it well. Let's put this on a tray so it's not this wet towel directly on the oven top. So that's gonna hang out over there to get warm. I'm gonna clean up real quick and we'll come back and start the beans. Recipes for homemade British baked beans seem to be kind of a choose your own adventure situation. Every recipe I found was kind of different from the other. It seems like it's not something that people make standard, so it varies depending on who's making it. I found one from a YouTube channel called Food Busker. That's the one I'm gonna go with. I have an enameled cast iron pot. I'm just gonna add a little bit of neutral vegetable oil into the bottom of it. And I'll put a link to the recipe I'm using. It says to use olive oil, but I understand from a health perspective, olive oil's popular, but it adds a flavor that I don't particularly want to add. Into this, I am adding 3 shallots that have been roughly chopped. I'm also gonna add a little bit of salt now and pepper, just so it's baking or getting sealed into the dish, layered in. Once the shallots have started sizzling, I have a couple of pieces of smoked bacon that I have chopped up and I'm adding in there with it. While those are cooking, I'm gonna start brewing some very strong coffee. This has started to caramelize, so I'm adding in an heirloom tomato, actually 2 heirloom tomatoes that I have roughly chopped, And I'm keeping the stem on as well. In the video, he kept the stem on. He did it kind of weird, just use a whole tomato in there, like cut in half, and it seemed a bit odd. I want them to break down so we get more of an even sauce. Now I'm adding a little bit of fresh thyme and some fresh sage. Now I need a tablespoon and a half of English mustard powder, which seems bonkers. This stuff is potent. So that's what he said. Now I'm putting in a tablespoon of brown, light brown sugar. This already smells wonderful. Herby, tomatoey, a little bit of shallot and bacon. So I'm gonna let this thicken for a couple of minutes. While that's cooking for a couple of minutes, let's take a look at the beans. I just used navy beans, which I believe are the same as Haricot beans. I don't know. They're called something different in the UK. What are called Haricot beans. Navy beans. I soaked these overnight last night, and today I mixed them with 6 cups of chicken stock and ran them through the instant pot for 2 hours, an hour and a half. So I'm just draining them so I have them to go, and I have that extra juice if I need to add it into here. So now, after this is cooked for a couple minutes, I have a chipotle chili that has been diced up. I cheated and used 2. I really like chipotles. And that's going to give it a smokiness along with the bacon. Oh, that mustard's coming through strong now. So now we need a shot of espresso, so just a little bit of coffee, and I'll save the rest for myself. We're getting close to the end now, so I have 4 cloves of garlic that have been chopped. So then I'm adding in the Haricot beans that have been cooked, the navy beans. And I just used 1 package of the dried beans. This is looking a bit thick. I'm gonna add in some of this liquid that the beans cooked in. Just thin this down some. And let's give this a taste just to see where it is seasoning wise. It's tasty. It's definitely got more of a kick than Heinz beans do, but the tomato flavor isn't super strong. So what I'm going to do is take some little cherry tomatoes and cut them in half and add them in, just to help hopefully beef up the tomatoiness. This recipe also calls for a tablespoon of molasses. I'm going to use black treacle, and I'm going to add in some paprika just to make the color a little bit more reddish. Okay, one last taste. Last time I checked, the salt level was okay, but tasty, actually. Wow. It kind of is starting to taste like what I remember Heinz beans to taste like. But I've only had Heinz beans once, so take that with a grain of salt. But all right, it might be close-ish, similar. I don't know. Now what do? I'm going to put this in the oven for 25-30 minutes to thicken up. The beans are in the oven cooking away, and I think the bread has risen enough, so it's time to come back to that. So I'm going to keep this baking tray to cook the bread on. I just want to dust it with some flour. Let's take a look. Yeah, it's got a nice rise to it. Just turn this out. Give it a nice punch down. Knead it a couple of times. It's a sexy dough. Soft and silky and stretchy. There you go. Window pane. Go ahead and bring it back into a ball and then make it oblong, a little bit pointed at the ends. There we go. I'm just going to put this on the tray and 20 minutes of, do the second rise of this for another 20 minutes. So the bloomer bread's going to have to rise for another 20 minutes and cook for 30 minutes, so that's another good 50 minutes. The beans will be done by then. Maybe have a little bit of extra time to really cook down some more and get nice and tasty. Get all those tomatoes cooked down. That's all for this point. Let's do a taste test. And I'm down to my last snack here. Tunnock's milk chocolate coated caramel biscuits. I'd never heard of these, even vaguely. They looked really obscure and odd to me. I was worried I might have gotten something that nobody had heard of or that nobody eats. But I got a couple of comments, people saying that they're a favorite. I don't know if that's specific. Oh, they're individually wrapped. They look like little packages of cough drops. The hulls of medicine. Okay, shape-wise, they look like a What are those little Debbie peanut buddies? Little wafer sticks filled with peanut butter and covered with chocolate from Little Debbie. Just smells like vaguely chocolatey. Let's give it a try. It's a little bit chewier than I was expecting. I guess that's from the caramel. It's pretty tasty. Let's try dipping it in some coffee. That's tasty in coffee. I bet it would hold up to tea really well. That's the secret I'm learning with a lot of British sweet treats, is they're meant to be had with tea. All right, the beans are out of the oven, looking tasty. And I think this has gotten its second rise enough. And what I want to do now is just spray down the outside with a little bit of a mist of water and dust it with a little bit of flour, the recipe says. Now I need to do 4 big slashes down the top of it. And, I bumped the oven temperature up to 425 Fahrenheit. Not sure what that is in Celsius, but this is going in like this for 25 to 30 minutes. This is an interesting looking loaf of bread. It looks nice. I just want to tap the bottom of it to make sure it's done. Haha! Let this cool for just a couple of minutes, a little while, so we can slice it for the toast. I'm going to start heating up the Heinz beans. Don't have a clear memory of what these look like other than on the package here. So hopefully they're kind of a similar color to the ones I made. Oh no, these are much more red. And I have 2 types of cheese that I'm going to use. On the basic ones, I'm just going to use standard grocery store pre-shredded cheddar. And for the Bougie baked beans, I'm going to use some of this Henning Colby cheese. This is a world champion cheese, 3-time gold medal winner, made by Henning Cheeses in Wisconsin, which is, I think, like a 4th generation cheese maker. And it's a very, very good high quality Wisconsin cheese. Seems appropriate that I taste a little bite. That's lovely. With a little assembly line set up here, let's get into slicing this bread and toasting it. Just gonna stick these into the toaster. Oop, hot. Gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous toast. Put a little bit of butter on each one. So I'm going to put some Heinz beans on this one. Okay, that's about half a can. That seems to be all that this bread really needs. Okay, and onto that, I'm putting this grocery store cheddar, shredded cheddar. Beans on toast, traditional style, on the bloomer bread with cheddar cheese. Oofta! Now the Bougie beans. Yes. Then I've got this world champion Colby that I just freshly shredded. All right, we've got traditional versus Bougie. I wonder which one's gonna win. Let's head to the table. All right, baked beans on toast. Let's jump right in with the traditional Heinz beans, some regular grocery store shredded cheddar, the fresh made bloomer bread. It's iconic for a reason. Surprisingly tasty. The cheese on there helps bump it up a level. Using good bread really does a lot. Kind of had it before with when I had the full breakfast. I had toast, I had beans, so I ate the 2 together, but it wasn't a proper tasting. Very good. That's very good. Wow. But I can definitely see how this would just be, you know, a quick meal. You're kind of tired. Let's get something very hearty, lots of protein from the beans, filling from the bread, and like nice richness from the cheese. Classic beans on toast, I'm going to give an 8 out of 10 because it's a classic for a reason, I think. Definitely a nice comfort meal. Let's move into the Bougie Posh version here. And like I said before with these beans, the recipes for homemade baked beans, British style, were all over the map. I chose one that looked tasty to me. So it's gonna be open to interpretation whether or not you think these come close or whether I should have used another recipe. That's understandable. But I just wanted to do it to add a little bit of extra dimension to this video. So I'm not just tasting beans, Heinz beans and the bloomer bread. It's very tasty. Those beans are tasty. And I actually taste the cheese a little bit stronger. The cheese from the basic one just sort of, it was there, there's a little bit of texture, a little bit of punch, but this has a much nicer, stronger flavor. The beans are pretty similar. There is a good kick of heat from the chipotle peppers I used. So if you were to follow this recipe, probably lay off the chipotles if you don't like the heat. And there's a little bit more smokiness. That's both from the chipotle and the smoked bacon. But other than that, there is a similarity. These definitely taste a lot more like Heinz beans than any American baked beans I've had. So these bougie beans, the Posh ones, are not quite as sweet and a little bit smokier. But you know what? All together, I'm digging it. I'll definitely eat this. Yeah, they taste in the neighborhood and the style of the Heinz, but elevated. I'm happy with them. Who doggies? I'm gonna go ahead and give them an 8 out of 10 as well though, just because it is so much more work than just opening a tin of beans. So I don't think the extra flavor justifies it unless you're already making it or you're in the mood to make it. And for the bloomer bread by itself, I'm giving that 10 out of 10 for a bread recipe. I really like it. It is so simple. The focus in that video went haywire, and I didn't notice it until I was editing. If you have liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. That helps more than you can know. If you have not already and you would like to, please subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the future. And Pearl will be here waiting for you next time. A little bean. Oh, sorry. A little bean. A little bean. A little bean. Okay. Have a good day.